Hello. One of the biggest talking points after Ireland's first two Autumn Nation Series games has been penalties. Andy Farrell was asked about it a few times. John Fogarty was asked about it in an interview this week. Um, but I was reading an article before the Argentina match as written by RT's Neil Tracy. In the article, he had argued that their dip in form hasn't happened overnight. So I decided to look back and do an overview of all the penalties that Ireland has ever given away um, through the 2004 and throughout Andy Farrell's 5 year tenure because I'm really cool and I have lots of friends, obviously. Also, I love a good Excel sheet. I decided to look at two other nations just to compare for this particular year. Um, so I looked at South Africa and New Zealand, and I only picked this year because the figures were really difficult to get. South Africa's website is really good for figures, but New Zealand, they just give you match highlights. They don't give you match stats, so it was really difficult. I couldn't actually get the stats for one particular New Zealand game this year. So I'm basing on I think 12 out of their 13 games this year, just because I couldn't find anywhere in the internet the match stats for one of their particular games. And these two nations I picked because they've kind of been jostling with Ireland for the top three spots in the world rankings. So I decided they'd be three good nations to compare Ireland with for this year. Just in terms of housekeeping, I will be going year by year rather than season by season, purely because it's easier to break down the figures. Also because Andy Farrell's tenure began mid-season, so he began in January 2020. So to make it a kind of even comparison, it's just easier to go year by year. Also comparing it with New Zealand and South Africa, who are in the Southern Hemisphere, their seasons start at a different time. So it's just kind of easier just to go by year and do 24 as the given year this year. In terms of penalty points, I will be talking about kicked penalty points only, not points that come through, say, tries off penalties and lineouts and all that kind of stuff. It's just purely points that have been kicked against Ireland, South Africa, and New Zealand. And finally, this data has been collected from various different websites. It's taken me a long time. I've tried to check and double check as much as I can. So I'm hopefully the figures are as accurate as possible. So the reason why I kind of became interested in this in Neil Tracy's article, he said that in the last two games, this was before the Argentina game, it was the preview to that game. He said their opponents have scored a staggering 42 points from penalties alone. And then after the Argentina game, three penalties were kicked by Argentina. Now that's 54 points. So Ireland has had 72 points from penalties kicked against them this year. According to Neil Tracy's article against the Springboks in July, this is the second test. All 24 of South Africa's points came from eight penalty kicks from Andre Pollard, while in the New Zealand game, 18 points were kicked by the All Blacks' Damien McKenzie alone. 47% of the 153 points Ireland have conceded this year have been from penalty kicks. And in the last three games, so that's South Africa, the second test, New Zealand in the autumn, and Argentina in the autumn, the 54 points from penalties account for 75% of the total points from penalties kicked in this year. So, of all the penalties they've given away in this year, the last three games account for 75% of those. Of the 66 points that Ireland has conceded within those three games, so South Africa, New Zealand, and Argentina, 82% of them have been from penalty kicks. So that's 54 out of 66 of those points have been from penalty kicks. So in 2024, the percentage of points conceded through penalty kicks was the highest of Andy Farrell's tenure, with 47% of all points conceded being from penalty kicks. So those figures in previous years, it would have been 35% in 2023, 30% in 2022, 23% in 2021. So that would have been the lowest ever under Andy Farrell, 35% in 2020. So comparing that statistic to New Zealand and South Africa this particular year, penalty kicks made up 33% of South Africa's total points conceded, while that figure was 29 for New Zealand. So this year, South Africa conceded 124 penalties, while New Zealand conceded 116 penalties so far this year. And in terms of points, that's 72 points for South Africa and 75 points for New Zealand, compared to Ireland's 72 points from kicked penalties this year so far. So far this year, Ireland has conceded 95 penalties, and that's actually the second lowest since Andy Farrell took over. Just a caveat with that, Ireland has only played 9 games so far this year, while other years they've played more games. They played like an average of maybe 11 to 12. Last year was 13 games due to the World Cup. So just to bear that in mind with the particular figures, we still have 2 games yet to go this year. So looking at previous years, the total number of penalties Ireland conceded in 2023 was 121. That had the year with the World Cup, so it was obviously a bit higher because it had more games. In 2022, there was 116 penalties. In 2021, 100 penalties, and the lowest ever was in 2020. There was 86 penalties conceded. Even though Ireland conceded their second lowest penalty count this year so far. However, 2024 has seen a higher average penalty per game figure than any other year of Andy Farrell's tenure. There's a current average of 10.56 penalties per game. Compared to previous years, so would be 9.31 last year in 2023, 10.55 in 2022, 10 in 2021, and 9.56 in 2020. While looking at the average penalties conceded by South Africa and New Zealand for this year, South Africa's average is 10.33 and New Zealand's average is 9.66. Ireland also had its lowest ever penalty count in a game during 2024. It was during the 2024 Six Nations against Scotland. They only conceded 4 penalties in that game, and that's the lowest across Andy Farrell's tenure in the role. The highest was joint highest between 4 games. It was Argentina, New Zealand, Wales, and France, with 13 penalties conceded in each of those games. The biggest thing to take away from these figures is that despite 2024 seeing the second lowest penalty count, it's seen the highest number of points conceded through penalty kicks, also the highest average penalty count in the Andy Farrell era. Also this year, Ireland has conceded just 12 tries. That's the lowest of the Andy Farrell era. And if you compare it to South Africa, they conceded so far this year 20 tries. The penalty count is something that John Fogarty and Andy Farrell were asked about during the week. Both spoke about how Ireland over the past 10 years have been known for their discipline, and something that they were good at was not giving away many penalties. John Fogarty this week, he said it was something that they're very aware of, especially within their own half, and they were working on trying to control those situations, especially in their own half. And he just said it was just about understanding themselves and just to make sure that they're on top of it. And he said that the players were hyper aware of these situations. And he said that it was just he said that there's kind of a focus on being a bit more sharper. And he said he was confident that the team can get ahead and get on top of these issues for the next 2 games in the autumn series. Just 2 more points from Neil Tracy's article just to finish. It's actually a really good article. I will link below. It's a bit out of date because it was done before the Argentina game as a preview, but there's some interesting points about penalties and stuff like that. He said, looking at the low level of tries being conceded by Ireland, he said a more cynical view would be that Ireland are conceding so few tries because teams are given a shot at 3 points before they even get to the 22. And he also said that of the penalties in 2024, so this is pre-Argentina, 46% have been conceded between the halfway and their own 22, considerably higher than any other nation, and that is something that is affording the opponents constant opportunities to apply scoreboard pressure. So the biggest thing, it seems to be, from Ireland is not necessarily the amount of penalties they are conceding, but where they're conceding the penalties, and the fact that those places that they're conceding the penalties are kickable, and players are kicking more penalties against Ireland. They're racking up more points rather than in try points. It's coming from the kicking tee. So the data seems to refute the point that this didn't happen overnight, because in the last 3 games, the points given away in penalty kicks accounts for 75% of the total points conceded through penalty kicks in 2024. Also, while the last three matches alone accounted for 39% of the overall penalties conceded in 2024, Ireland only conceded 18 points through penalty kicks within the other 6 games of 2024. So it'll be really interesting to see how the next 2 games go penalty wise. If there's any more interesting data on this, I might do an update, maybe do like a whole year review with the other 2 games included. Other than that, I really enjoyed not much collating the figures because I had to really pull them from lots of different places and it took a good while, but I really loved looking at the statistics and breaking down the various facts and figures once I had all the data collated. If you would be interested in seeing another stats video, please comment below. So please like and subscribe, and I will be back with another video shortly. Bye now.